All right, friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a new friend again. His name is Ben Tan. So just to quick intro is that I met Ben in one of the friends group gathering, and then I know that he's a content creator as well, of course, in investing topics. But he's very active on Instagram, and don't have many content creator friends that is active on Instagram. So I think it's quite interesting, and you put up a lot of all these interesting nice looking charts on Instagram. I think that's very helpful for educations. Ben, welcome to the channel.
Thank you so much for welcoming me.
Ben, why don't we start with a quick introduction about yourself for the new viewers that haven't met you?
Sure. So I think you introduced me pretty well. So I'm Ben here. I'm mostly active in on Instagram with my social handle, the Globetrotting Investor. I've been investing almost more than 10 years already. I started since uni days, really wanting to find ways to make my money work even harder so that I can actually fund my MBA. Right? So that's a very strong why back then. And of course, most of the stocks that I invest back then were very different from what I invest today. Because back then, I need something that is stable, something that is safe, because I have a very short time horizon, right? I'm looking at like what, 5 to 7 years. Then I can divest out and pay for my MBA. So back then, I primarily invest in REITs and also, and of course, stocks in Singapore. Fast forward to today, mainly my accounts are in the US, be it in Singapore, a bit in China. But yeah, so that's how my investing journey begins with that strong why of pursuing MBA and how it become it transformed throughout the years.
So you have completed your MBA for how long already?
I think I completed 3 years ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
3 years ago.
So the
Okay.
good thing is that I didn't take up any like student loan or personal loan and stuff like that. So literally, whatever I've invested and reinvest those dividends because REITs pay really good dividends. I reinvested back, and when I embark my MBA, I kind of strategically divest them, right? And I just pay for it.
So you took your MBA, is it in overseas? Which
No.
country? Ah,
Sorry. Yes, it's overseas. But the thing is that it actually offer here. So it's kind of like a private institution. So it's an overseas university, but offered locally. So it's a Glasgow university. I intend to do my last year in Glasgow. I intend to kind of like take my graduation photo in Glasgow. Unfortunately, COVID hit.
So really, throughout the course, it's like you stay in Singapore because of that.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that it kind of like defeat the purpose of taking MBA because when you take MBA, you kind of want to network with friends, right, or your schoolmates or your classmates, and the physical setting is the best setting to kind of network, talk, and whatsoever discuss. But in my second year, things changed. We all moved to online, and online is just and because of the lockdown, you cannot meet people. It's illegal. So
Yeah.
yeah, it just defeated the purpose. But oh well, that was a pass.
Yeah, I think we all just have to adapt. Last time
Yeah.
it's like all this over Zoom is so strange, right? It's so new, but now it seems like even both of us are in Singapore, but we are still meeting over, like on internet. Okay, right.
Correct.
Let's jump into the topics. A few questions that I want to ask now. Okay, I've watched one of your interview. I think his name is Jack Allweil. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. So that was like the only one long form interview that I watched, like interviewing you. So, and then in that video, I think that was maybe 1 year plus ago, and you mentioned that your portfolio consists of mainly technology companies, some
Yeah.
ETF, some sector ETF. So just want to check with you. It has been 1 year since that video, right? Has your portfolio changed a lot, or is it still about the same?
Still about the same, to be honest. But in terms of ETF, I did divest quite a number of it. And the reason is because I just feel that I over diversify. Yeah, with ETFs, and I mean, if you kind of invest too many different kind of ETFs, you kind of over diversify your portfolio. And over the year, I track my performance. It does not perform well. So I start to divest some of my ETFs, and I start to look into specific companies. Yeah, but it doesn't change much, right? Majority they are still in the technology sector.
Okay. Can you like give some, like a broad description on what are the names and how do you like why do you choose this kind of companies? Like what's your general philosophy when it comes to investing?
Okay, so probably there's two parts to this question. Let me
Yeah.
answer the second part, which is the general philosophy, right? I
Yeah.
think first thing first, you just need to start something that you know and you understand, or what they call it the circle of competency.
Mm-hmm.
So for my case, I understand technology well. I understand healthcare well. Industry is a very broad sector, right? You can go from Boeing, which manufacture aircraft, to defense sector. They're all under industry. So certain sub-segment of industry. So first thing first, you need to know, your circle of competency,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not about how big that competency is. It's not about how many sectors you know. It's not like, oh, I know like, wow, 6 out of 12 sectors, okay, but really more about staying within that circle, right, and not trying to X mark to kind of jump in out of the circle. Then within that circle of competency, you start to identify, first thing first, great businesses, like really good businesses, not just good, really good. How do I actually identify this? Is by looking at their economy mode, and I do have five parts to analyze their economic mode. The first one is intangible assets. The second one is network effect. Third is whether do they have cost advantage. The fourth is barrier of entry, and of course, last one is switching cost. So based on these five elements, I kind of rank them to see whether they have a strong economic mode or not, or whether they have a competitive advantage. That's how I actually determine whether the business is a good business or a great business. Now, once you have identified whether the business is good or not, the process don't stop there. The most important part, which is the final part, is valuation, right? Even if you find great businesses, it does not make sense to overpay it, right? It just does not make sense. So you have to find the value of the business, right, and see whether does the stock price justify the value of the business itself. And of course, don't forget your margin of safety. Things can get really inaccurate, especially when you do valuation, because it's really more of an art rather than science. There's a lot of assumption, estimation throughout the whole valuation process. So you need the kind of margin of safety so that you can get a bit of a buffer if things go southwards. So it's really that three basic step, right? Nothing complicated, right? Stay, know your, look for companies or industry that you understand, identify great businesses, value it, and then, enter at a price whereby there's a bit of a margin of safety away from your valuation.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the general philosophy. So this framework actually guide me into looking at those companies that I invested. So far, it served me pretty well.
Yeah, especially this year, since last year actually the rally run, right? So
Yeah,
by
correct,
by
correct.
just
But you need to have a lot of conviction throughout this whole process, because
yeah.
2022 to 2023, most of the tech companies just tank. And then it is because of this kind of market fear, emotions, news, noise, whatsoever. You kind of like, is my framework okay or not? Should I relook on my framework? So it's those self-doubt starts to
Yeah.
come in. I mean, it's human nature, right? I
Mm.
start to self-doubt. Oh, jialat, especially Meta, go
Yeah.
down to $90. I think that's the most like, oh, is this something wrong? Is my framework something wrong? Did my calculation went wrong and stuff like that? So you need to have conviction. So even if you have all the right framework, you determine the right price to enter and stuff like that. You need that conviction to pull you through. So yeah, 2022 to 2023, tech was like a major sell. But of course, recently, yeah, it performed pretty well.
When you just list down, the moats, right? For example, like
Yeah,
network effect, I'm thinking of example of companies, like, the typical example, network effect would be Meta, would be
yeah,
Google. And then you talk about like, all of these are like switching costs. You can talk about like Microsoft, people can't switch out from Windows, all these things, right?
yeah.
There are like the typical examples that people give. So my questions to you is like, okay, based on all these, investment modes, right? You will tend to pick like the really like the largest companies in the world, right? Companies like Magnificent Seven and so on. So I just curious, would you think that this one would end up like you only just investing in the mega cap or large cap and not giving enough, considerations to those smaller companies?
It's actually true to a certain extent.
Mm,
So in fact, most of the mid caps are just purely mid caps. Let's don't talk about the small caps.
mm,
Actually, there are mid caps company that actually fulfill these criteria,
mm,
right? Of course, your Magnificent Seven, your Fang or whatsoever, they actually get the most headlines, right? But if you kind of dig deeper, especially in the mid cap segment, that's where you actually find gems. Because recently, it's just very, very, very tough for me to find undervalued gems in the large cap segment, right?
yeah, yeah.
In fact, your S&P 500 companies, it's a bit tough to find that undervalued companies anymore. Of course, this is based on my calculation. I could be wrong, right? So it's a bit tough. But for your mid cap, that's where you can find true gems. And typically, these are your companies that give you that multi-bagger.
Mm,
Large cap can. I'm not trying to say they can't, but it's tougher. The probability is lower.
yeah.
So it's true to a certain extent, right? I mainly find more undervalued stocks in the mid cap segment rather than the large cap one.
Mm,
Your Max 7, I think right now, if I'm not wrong, some of them are only a couple of them they are still undervalued. The rest are, based on my calculation,
mm.
based on my intrinsic valuation, they are probably overvalued already.
My follow-up questions, right? Just now you talk about DCF, you notice that they are all overvalued. So what's your take? Is it really like will you describe this as like we are approaching bubble, very, very pricey, and you're thinking about like taking some positions off, holding more cash? Will you do something like this? Or how do you, handle current environment?
Well, again, there's two parts to this
Yeah.
question. The first part about selling. I won't sell unless it hits three criteria, right? I won't sell unless the business starts to deteriorate.
Mm,
Something's wrong with the business. The business is not performing, right? Fundamentally, is something wrong. So I sell. Second is if let's say I talk about opportunity cost. If let's say holding, or I would say, let me just rephrase. If let's say I invest in this company
mm,
can yield better results, better returns than holding on to this company, then I'll sell.
mm,
It makes sense, right? If this gives me 10% while holding on this give me like what 5%, then of course I'll sell that 5% and go for the 10%. Again, all these are estimation, right? And of course the last point is something that I hope I won't get into, and that is I really, really need cash. Right? Because of I don't know, personal emergency whatsoever. So this is something touch wood, I won't happen. So I only sell when these three things have take place. So if let's say one of my stocks skyrocket, threefold, fourfold, tenfold, but the fundamentals are still there. I won't sell. I'll just hold it. Right? I'll
mm,
just I mean there's no reason to sell. Really, there's no reason.
mm,
Because if let's say you view yourself as a business owner, owning that business rather than a stock ticket,
mm.
right? If your business is doing well, you just hold it on. You just still continue being an owner of the business, right? You won't just sell it. So that's my principle of selling. For your first question, in terms of approaching bubble or not, I can't, to be honest, I can't really tell. I hope I have a crystal ball as well to tell whether are we reaching to a bubble or not. But if you take a look at the market as a whole,
Mm.
and you divide them accordingly to their industry, of course, there are certain industry that's a bit pricier. Tech industry is one of them. I
Mm.
feel that, and I think that is a bit pricey these days. While there are, of course, other segments like healthcare, they are still not gaining that kind of attention for investors. Not just healthcare, it's probably industries as well. So it's really about how we segment it and how we actually see that particular industry whether they are approaching it or not.
What's your take on the current AI hype? Do you think this one is a hype or real stuff is coming? Real, real.
I actually wrote an article about it
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
I think I shared it last week. Well, if let's say you take a look at the technology itself,
Mm,
the AI technology itself, it is really transformative. It really empowers a lot of companies to do greater things and to produce much more things. This is really productive to use or incorporate AI into the whole company strategy. But if you take a look at the stocks related to AI, then there's a lot to dive into it. I know, for example, the recent one is Nvidia. There's a lot of attention to it. Based on my calculation again, it is overvalued, right? And Nvidia is something that, to be honest, I go through the whole business one, two times, probably the third time already. There are certain components that I still don't understand, so it's really not within my competency. Those terms, technical terms that they use is really too chim for me really. So I'm still quite lost. So when you talk about AI as a segment, we also need to take a look at what particular sub-segment we are talking about, right? If let's say you are talking about a chip maker, if let's say you're talking about cloud computing, right? These are all components that use AI, but they are very, very different businesses, right? One is cloud computing, one is literally making chips itself. And of course, there are also another software portion, software companies that actually use AI or develop AI. So we really have to take a look at these different subsegments.
Okay, so cannot generalize like, oh,
It's
it's a
hard.
big
It's
AI, then everything
correct.
is the same, right? Yeah.
Correct. It's really hard. In fact, when I was looking at some of the healthcare stocks,
Uh,
they're actually starting to incorporate AI into it, which is really powerful because they use AI to kind of diagnose and kind of give a bit of prediction whether this patient will develop cancer or not, right? So, does this make the healthcare stock an AI stock or something like that,
yeah.
right? So, AI is just a strategy, right? It's a technology. I
Yeah.
think, in fact, some of the industry companies out there, they're also incorporating AI,
Yeah.
right? Automation is one of them, right? So does that make them an AI stock or not? It's a bit hard, but you have to really dive deep into that particular subsegment to
Yeah.
see.
I'm quite curious, when you say you do DCF on Nvidia, right? What's the growth rate that you put into your model? I'm not looking for a specific number. I'm more like looking, because there are general two view, right? Some people will say that, oh, it is capex cycles. Currently, all these hyperscalers are spending all this money to buy the GPU chips, right? But this is one of, they will have enough chips at some point. Then after that, they might slow down, right? The demand on all these chips, because this is like a one-off from without the chat GPT to with GPT, there's a one step up, right? Later it will just come back down. So it will become like a cycle. This is the one view. The other view is saying that, oh, actually whatever number that you're thinking of is still not as high as the actual number be, because the actual number will be a lot larger. There will be agents doing all this, AI query and so on. So basically AI talk to AI will also use all this GPU, right? So
Yeah,
then you will can put in like 30% growth,
yeah.
40% growth for five years, 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Whatever
So
number it
that
is,
so that's the
it's on the
reason
low end.
that you need margin of safety because DCF is a good combination of art and science,
Mm.
right? The art
Yep.
part is this part, right? There's a lot of estimation that goes into the whole model, right? Based on my analysis back then, I'm actually looking at my website right now. I actually put a good projected growth rate of 15 to 20%
Okay.
for
For how
the
long?
first 1 to 5 years, right? I put 20%. From the year 6 to year 10, I put at a rate of 15%. But this particular estimation was back in September 2023. That was the last time I actually looked into NVIDIA.
Then maybe
So
it's
yeah,
not. Maybe it's fairly valued now, given the huge increase in the revenues and free cash flow over the past 2 quarters.
yeah, probably. But again,
But price also
I don't
went
know.
up. So
Yeah, I don't know, but I really need to understand the business first. Maybe I'm not that smart in understanding the whole chip that they are producing and stuff like that. So I try to kind of back then I
yeah.
just scan through it, try to understand it, right? And then yeah, but right now things are getting more and more complicated with their whole AI investment.
Then what are the area or what are the sectors that you are looking for, especially let's say over the next 6 months or so? Like
Right
is
now,
healthcare one? Yeah.
it's really industry and healthcare. It's still industry
Mm.
and healthcare. Yeah,
Okay.
because if I look at my portfolio, really, most of them they are in tech sector. So
Mhm.
it's really trying to diversify a bit in terms of industry. So that's why I'm looking at industrial as well as healthcare.
Sorry, I don't get
It stays the same.
the industrial. What are an industrial in your definitions?
Industries are one of the segment that is pretty interesting. It's
Mm.
pretty diversified itself,
Mm.
and it is something that I would say one of the most sub-segments across other industry. Right, healthcare pretty straightforward, technology pretty straightforward,
Mm.
utilities pretty straightforward. Right, but industry, right, you can do from manufacturing an aircraft
Mm.
to building a navy ship,
Mm.
right? So defense company like General Dynamics, all this, they are part of industry.
Mhm.
To even 3M. 3M company is actually under industry segment.
Mm.
Or even waste management companies, like waste management itself, the company, right? So it's pretty broad. So I'm still looking for hidden gems within this segment. Yeah.
Mm. And you're looking because some of these companies, let's say they have some factory, they're producing stuff that's more commodity type, like there's no pricing power, then you would tend to see lower margin, right? But you are looking for those with high margin, strong mode, they have very hard to switch up kind of companies.
Yeah, I'm looking at the moat itself first.
Okay.
Margin plays a part in my analysis, but
Mm.
I think first thing first, I need to ensure that there's a moat because with
Mm.
a moat, right,
Mm.
with a strong moat, right, they got pricing power, right.
Mm.
When they raise price, it doesn't really affect the demand,
Mm.
right. For example, your LVMH, right,
Mm.
constantly they are raising price of their luxury goods, but
Mm.
that does not make I mean, people still buy their goods.
Mm.
People still buy their products, even they raise their price. So I think first thing first is still very important to take a look at the moat itself, because it kind of command a bit of a pricing power, right?
Mm.
It's not a general kind of I would say statement, right? Some still do not command pricing power despite having a moat. Some actually do.
Mm.
So first thing first, I still look at the moat itself.
Mm.
Margin wise comes later.
Yeah, it sounds to me that you're using a checklist when you are
Oh
approaching
yeah,
all
yeah,
these
that's a
companies.
checklist.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
have something like, okay, does it pass or not? Something
that's
to
a check. In
decide.
fact, if you go through my typical analysis on my
Uh,
website, it's a template.
uh,
It's a template. So I go through a checklist first.
Very
Yeah,
systematic. So
yeah.
when you run through all these checklists on, let's say I just switch gear a bit, you run through all these checklists on companies in, let's say, in Asia, China, or let's say Singapore, right? That that's like, are there many companies that pass all these checklists?
No,
Is there a
no.
reason why you have I presume
I mean,
much broader? Mm.
if let's say I have a lot of companies that pass through this checklist, I will open an ETF already. No.
Okay.
It's still pretty stringent. I would say that is it to pass through my very first criteria of understanding business. That is also a bit limited, really.
Mm.
If you realize, I rarely do utilities. Next is the mode itself, the competitive advantage itself, that's the strength itself. That's
Mhm.
something that also not a lot of businesses can actually pass through that criteria.
Mhm.
And of course, valuation plays a part as well.
Mhm.
So not a lot of business actually pass through that criteria. Of course, I don't ignore them,
Mm.
right? I still actually put it under my watch list,
Mhm.
right? So if 5 years down the road things change, I mean, we look into the company again.
Mm. Then can you comment on Singapore companies? Do you have you don't have a big allocations to Singapore, right?
Yeah. In fact, my biggest is still in the US.
Okay, I see.
In my Singapore is pretty straightforward. It's REITs and banks.
So it's a slightly different strategy. One is like the core part, which is like
Right,
targeting all these companies that fit your criteria. The other one
right.
is more on like just dividend kind of.
Right. They're all dividend play. Your banks they give really good dividends.
I see.
REITs as well. So Singapore is pretty straightforward. It's just banks and REITs, nothing much, nothing
Okay.
exciting.
My closing questions, right, is what was your any investing tips for the viewers? Like what are the things that you usually your number one advice for people who are learning on investing?
Number one advice,
Yeah.
there's a lot of. I mean, for beginners, I think first thing first, really got to stay calm. I think I made this beginner mistake as well, and that is, wow, I finally want to get into investment, and then, whatever hot pick, hot stock, my friend recommend, my cousin recommend, my mother recommend, I'll just invest.
Yeah.
Right? And these days, right, because of fractional trading, you can just buy the kind of like 0.4 stock, which makes
Yeah.
investing way easier back then. Back then, when I first invest in Singapore stock, the lot size was 1,000. So you need to have that cash first before you can invest. Sidetrack a bit. So I think first thing first, you really have to keep yourself calm. I know investing is pretty exciting, especially for new beginners. But really, expose yourself. Read more books. Listen to your podcast. Follow. Read more analysis. Understand how different investors analyze their companies, their investments. There's no one size fit all approach, right? My framework is my framework. Your framework is probably different, right? You probably take a look at great businesses, because I know some investors actually don't mind paying a premium for great businesses because their mindset is that they are great businesses after all, right? So price will follow earnings because earnings will increase, stock price will follow the earnings. So it will still increase after. So there's no right, there's no wrong. So really, try to get more exposure, right, by reading, listening, I don't know, watching and stuff like that. Just absorb more knowledge before diving into your first dollar of investment. That's all. Don't need to rush. Really don't need to rush. Yeah. I make that mistake. I rush. And then I of course lose money.
Yeah, we all learn from this. But you are definitely right. I belong to the group of don't mind paying a bit of premium.
Yeah.
Sometimes it work out, but it's not like it's not due to like smart or what. Like just lucky, right? Because you just want to get in first and then just
Yeah.
ride on the trend. Then okay,
Correct.
profit. But there's also episode where, for example, I bought into like Snowflake at IPO, so still suffer some losses. But we managed
Yeah.
that through like allocations lah. It's like
Yeah.
you can rush in, but don't rush in like one
Correct.
big bullet
Correct.
lah. Yeah. So there's a way to manage lah.
Correct, correct. So yeah, that's why for beginners, there's really no that one best investment approach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really get more exposure, learn more, and
Mm.
then along the way fine tune it. I'm still fine tuning it. I wouldn't say mine has the best approach. I'm still fine tuning it, especially the DCF model is really a tough one to crack.
Mm.
So yeah, there's really no right, no wrong, and like what you say, you probably don't mind paying a bit of a premium, and that's fine, right? Because there's also that school of thought whereby earnings, I mean, stock price follow earnings, right? If earnings increase, stock price will increase eventually, right? So
Yep.
if you invest in really great companies which are overvalued, but 1 year down the road, 2 years down the road, the earnings just keep increasing. You ride on a trend, like what you say, and then you just cash out at the end of the day. Well, you make money, no right, no wrong.
Right. All right, all right. Thank you so much for all the sharings. So where can the viewers find you? Because I know, okay, I mentioned Instagram, right? There are a few more places. Maybe you can share with viewers.
I'm mainly on Instagram. I'm more active there. You can find me on Twitter as well. I try to also diversify my social media platform. Right, you diversify in stocks, you also need to diversify elsewhere. Apply this diversification method elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm trying to diversify my channels as well, but mainly still Instagram.
And your website, right?
Yeah, for those, in-depth long form analysis, like what I mentioned, those templates, you can actually visit my website to take a look of how I actually structure my analysis. Of course, if you think that there's ways to improve, or you think that this way is wrong way, it's wrong. Email me. I'm really open to learn, right, from the audience, your audiences as well. Like I said, this is a learning journey. It's not like a destination,
Mhm.
and everyone just learn from each other. That's the beauty of this community that you have created as well.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Thank you so much for
No,
coming.
I should thank you
Thank you. Thank you.
for inviting me.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.